All right, turning now to the UAW strike. Marks 6 weeks since the strike has started, and we have seen a lot of tactics, a lot of bargaining, and now one tentative deal. The pressure is on General Motors and Stellantis to get their own deal. So let's head on out to Rod Maloney, who is live today and can kind of give us an update on everything that is going on. All right, Rod, what are you hearing so far today?
Well, it's actually been kind of quiet here, Christy. I mean, we do know that Stellantis and GM have a lot of pressure on them. They're also in the process of trying to iron out their individual deals. The betting so far is on General Motors coming up with the next deal, but we'll have to see whether in fact that's the case. But we have been told that they have been hard at it, working this week, actively negotiating, trying to make something happen. And normally when you see this, Christy, and it's you know, heck, I've been doing this more than 30 years now, is that when the first one falls, it's not too long thereafter that the other two come in. So we should probably see some movement here, you would expect, in the next week or so, with at least the next one. And we'll have to see where that goes. But right now, the Ford folks are hearing from within the plant that they're going to start getting up to production. In fact, I've been told that out at Wayne Assembly, they're starting ever so slowly to get some test vehicles down the line next week. And the goal is to try and get up to fairly full production. But it takes a couple of weeks, maybe even a month, depending on how things go, to get everything up fully running completely. So that's what's happening on that side.
Yeah, and Rod, just refresh us. Coming up this weekend, workers for Ford will be able to see more of the details of what this deal might be, right?
Yes, Shawn Fain is going to do two things on Sunday. The first thing is they'll bring in all of the national leadership, the union's leadership in a town, and it's called the National UAW Ford Council. And what they'll do is they'll come in, look at the deal, and then they'll give it a thumbs up or down vote to send it off to the membership. That's usually pro forma. They don't usually go against what the president and the negotiating team has come up with. So they'll likely send it off to the membership. And then Shawn Fain says that on Sunday night he's going to do a Facebook Live where he'll give the specific details of what they were actually able to come up with. I mean, we know that there's 5 weeks of vacation, a 25% raise, but how they parcel that out becomes an issue. Usually they front load that, make the initial raise quite high, the later raises go low. Oftentimes there's a lump sum payment. We'll have to find out if that's there. We'll also find out if and whether Ford gave in on the electric vehicle joint venture issue, that of course being pressed by General Motors and their contract. So there's a lot that the membership wants to know. And then once they get that, then thereafter the regional officers will come together and they'll start talking about how they're going to explain the deal to their membership. And then over about a week or two, they will go ahead and have locals hold meetings where people can ask questions, get clarification of things, and then finally they'll do the vote. So we're at least about 2 weeks or more away from knowing whether the membership actually ratifies this contract. It's not a lead pipe cinch, but you get the impression that considering the amount of money that's coming their way, the membership would probably want to get in and get that raise going like right away and get back to work.
Yeah, absolutely, and it is going to be really interesting. You pointed out to see if Ford went in on that EV production piece that GM had talked about several weeks prior. All right, Rod Maloney, thanks so much for the live report. We'll talk to you a little bit later on Local 4 News at 4, 5, and 6 o'clock today. And you know, the impact of the strike is still being felt on companies and also across the region as we take a larger step back and see where we've been in this last 6 weeks and the ripple effect that we're still going to be feeling in the economy here. Joining me now is Patrick Anderson, Principal and CEO of the Anderson Economic Group. Patrick, thanks so much for joining me. It's good to have you.
Nice to talk with you.
All right, can you give us a sense of the latest numbers that you're seeing about the strike impact in our region from these 6 weeks?
We've been looking at this week by week, and this is a very expensive strike. And a lot of that is the consequence of the UAW's strategy this particular bargaining season, which has involved targeting shutdowns, often with just an hour or two's notice, that shut down plants. And in our map here, we've got like 19 different states that we see shutdowns in. It's inflicted a lot of losses on suppliers as well as OEMs, and it's minimized the amount of their own workers on strike. So we actually counted it up to $9.3 billion, and that was a week ago. It's very expensive.
And when, Rod earlier was talking about, you can't just flip a switch and production is just all of a sudden ramped back up to what it was. It's going to take a while for the Ford plants to come back online. And we still don't have a deal with General Motors and Stellantis right now. What do you envision in terms of hearing from other suppliers and whatnot about losing more money or it being very difficult to start delivering product? And it's a little bit more of a ripple effect on our economy then.
Mr. Maloney is correct here. I mean, it is not simply flipping a switch. Auto assembly lines in the automobile industry is an extremely complex, very high value added, very profitable engine when it's working, and extremely expensive if you shut it down. And that's one of the reasons we've had prosperity often in Michigan because of our anchor status here, are really founding the auto industry. And it also one of the reasons we have difficulty because when we shut it down, like we have with this strike and as we did with General Motors 4 years ago, it's very expensive. It's not easy to start back up. And you have suppliers that even this week, remember, we shut down 2 plants this week in the UAW strike. And that was the first 2 days of the week. And then we got a settlement announced, tentative agreement, on Wednesday. So it's been another expensive week. It's not just UAW workers, it's also supplier workers that are not getting a paycheck. And that's adding up to the economic distress in states like Michigan.
If we look forward, Patrick, and we're talking about a lot of money here. We're looking at 3 automakers that potentially now have to spend more for labor, but we also have a workforce that might have more money in their pocket to spend in the economy. Give us a sense of what we could be seeing, because you have these companies that now have to deal with extra expenses, but we could have more money going into the economy from people that have money to spend it now.
That's right, and every labor bargaining is like this. I don't attempt to tell anyone how much they should earn or how much someone should pay them, but I and most Americans said, hey, these companies are profitable. Inflation means they should get a wage increase. The workers didn't cause inflation. That was all created in Washington, D.C. So most Americans were rooting for a wage increase. That was obvious. And the UAW, to their credit in terms of their bargaining effort, achieved a lucrative contract. And I think what UAW President Shawn Fain said on Wednesday night, we achieved a record contract, the most lucrative contract since the days of Walter Reuther. I think he's correct. I mean, they were very successful in getting a tentative agreement that satisfied nearly every one, if not every one of their actual major objectives. So their workers are going to be getting more, but there are consequences to this also. And the best estimate that I've seen is what Ford said, that it would increase the cost of producing a car in the United States at a UAW organized plant by $900 a unit. That's going to price some vehicles out. And I think there'll be consequences here we'll be facing in the auto industry for some time because of that.
When we look at the timing of all of this, and again, we know that GM and Stellantis have not reached a deal, but we can only imagine that in the next couple of weeks with the template of Ford in place, and if that gets ratified, that we will be at this point. Looking at maybe a 7-week, 8-week total strike, what was your just initial thought in knowing that maybe it's going to be capped at this point, that something's not going to be going into December and beyond?
The UAW abandoned pattern bargaining, which they've used for 2 generations at the beginning of the strike, and now they're going to be back to it. So pattern bargaining is back, and I think you will see that if the workers ratify or look like they're ratifying an agreement this weekend with Ford, that GM and Stellantis will be heavily pressured to adopt something that is nearly identical in the major aspects. And I think pattern bargaining made sense for the UAW for generations, and it never really went away. It just was a totally new version of it where they struck all 3 automakers in different ways, kept them all off guard, inflicted a lot of damage on them, and then once they settled with one, they're going to take it to the other 2. Just again, as Shawn Fain said right out publicly on Wednesday. So I don't think this is going to last much longer, and I'm glad it's not going to last much longer because this is a huge cost, and about 30% of that $9 billion is right here in Michigan. So we're bearing the brunt of this cost. and it is not going to be something that's going to be trivial.
All right, Patrick Anderson, Principal and CEO of Anderson Economic Group. Thanks for the perspective. It's good to see you. Have a good weekend.
Nice to see you too.